Welcome to the Cannacurio Podcast, powered by Cannabis Media. I'm your host, Ed Keating, and today we're joined by Patricia Rosi, Chief Marketing and Strategy Officer for Acreage Holdings. Good morning.
Good morning, Ed. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. Glad to finally get you on the pod. I've seen you at trade shows pretty much forever, so it's good to finally have the opportunity to sit down and chat with you today. So you're at Acreage now, and your role has changed a lot in your tenure there. So what are you responsible for at Acreage?
So my title, Chief Marketing and Strategy Officer, but the long story short is I'm the steward of the brands and the brand strategy, and that covers several functions from product development, innovation, also marketing communications, all the way to even digital and technology. I'm in charge of technology because our world is digitally live, and it's really important that we integrate everything we do. So there's really importance and focus on making sure everything we do from a brand experience and consumer standpoint is really integrated with technology. I think what is important about brand is, my focus is to create a repeatable growth models based on our brands, based on consumer appeal. And what I love, I call it brand love, brand pride, brand love, brand pride internally, because we all are driven with the desire to produce the best quality products possible, but also brand love. We want our consumers to love our brands and to be really loyal to them and come back. And that's, what fuels this repeatable growth model. So I'm in charge of a lot of things, but I love it. We've made tremendous progress over the last 4 years that I've joined Acreage, and I'm really, really proud of the integration of, product innovation, because it's really all the touch points of a brand experience we own and we've improved upon. I think also what is really interesting about my profile is because I was an operator before and I'm a marketer and advertiser by career. I'm able also to influence brand strategy and connect the dots with all our operators. So really the ability to not only think through strategy, but deliver results. So very exciting times. Our house of brand now is close to $100 million within our two brands, The Botanist and Superflux. So amazing progress, amazing focus of the team. So that's what I do. I'm passionate about brands. What can I say?
Excellent. So, Patricia, with respect to brands and also your background that we'll get into in a bit with CPG, how are brands either similar or dissimilar to brands you've had to manage in other industries? Because there's always been a lot of talk about brands in cannabis, but trying to make them, as you said before, sort of repeatable and the experience to be consistent, let's say across states. What's it like managing brands in cannabis, I guess, versus other industries or markets that you've been in?
Well, the fundamentals are the same, right? When we talk about CPG, for me, it's universal access, right? And that's a great aspiration. That's an aspiration that has been driving me for the 12 years I've been in this industry. You said you've seen me at several trade shows. Yes, I'm in the cannabis industry for 12 years. So really the ability for us to broaden access, to lift the stigma, and to enable more people to really use cannabis to live their fullest life for me, that's an aspiration that is very analog to CPG. CPG is all about, they wrote the playbook for us. So the aspiration and the fundamentals are there. Having a brand that is differentiated, producing products that solve real problems, that are differentiated, that are quality, with also operations that are scalable, and also replicable, and being able to build an efficient model that is always, innovating and driving category innovation. Right. So the fundamentals are there where I think it's important, and you cannot just apply CPG logic into our world, is I think our world is, the cannabis industry is born from compassion and prohibition. So from an operator standpoint, it's a different mindset. It's a mindset that is built on different nuance. I think it's important as we scale a brand that we really respect the roots of our industry, and there's the craft, geographical differences, nuances. But at the end of the day, it starts with the consumer. What does the consumer want? And yes, some markets are more advanced than others in certain form factors and so on and so forth. But I think we're finally at a point where, with the maturity of our industry, or like part of the life cycle of our industry, we're being able to build brands that are really built on solid fundamentals, learned from the CPG industry.
So you talked about the playbook being the same, sort of it already being written. I'm curious, as our industry matures, we hear more talk of key performance indicators or KPIs in our space. And I'm curious, do those come out of the playbook too, or are there some like new and different ones that you've had to contend with in cannabis that are unique?
Well, there's the fundamentals are there, but there's definitely some things that is really important. For instance, for us is brand consistency across our footprint, and that's where compliance and regulatory make it challenging. So some things you might not think about checking in the CPG world is how close are you from one brand, one product everywhere. If you look, for instance, when we launched gummies, gummies are called soft roach in Pennsylvania, chewable lozenges in other places. In one market in Massachusetts, at some point, they were called jellies. So for all these regulatory, so there's not one size fits all. But I think it's important for us to look at, not to rule by exception, but really manage expectation, but still have an aspiration that is the one brand. But we're managing, reducing the exception, and that's not something you would manage in a regular CPG environment, because it's much easier.
Yeah, interesting. Well, now let's rewind before you got to Acreage and talk about sort of how you got there. One of the most interesting things that I've known about you is that you managed to get 4 of the 8 licenses in Maine with the wellness connection. And given how that market was structured prior to the state program with really just caregivers, that must have been just an arduous, challenging journey. That I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I view this as a journey, as an adventure, right? I've never followed a very linear career path. Discovered in the US that I was an entrepreneur in December 2011. I joined Wellness Connection, and I really viewed this as an amazing challenge. Yes, we received 4 of the 8 licenses because we had the best applications, points in period. And there's a lot of conspiracy theories and all that. We simply had the best of the 8. So what was really fascinating, though, beyond that, is the role. What really motivated me and drove me through this experience was building a good company, all around good companies in an industry that was nascent. So the challenge of making the impossible possible was really what was driving me, because a lot of folks are calling me and saying, "Oh, how can I get in the cannabis industry?" I'm like, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not a walk in the park, and you're going to have to problem solve for so many things all the time. So, at the time, that was true. I was not used to not having a credit card, calling a banker and people like were hanging up on me, or facing a situation that was, oh, wait a minute, everything that I know should be applying to a regular company is not applying. So I think it was very stimulating. As you can hear, I'm still very, very passionate about this adventure. We're able to build a great company Up to 4 years ago, we were 100 employees, full benefits paid,
Wow.
serving thousands and thousands of guests in our facilities, the ability to drive all the way up to 20 million in revenue. We were one of the first on the East Coast at a time where there was not really a clear financial model.
Mm.
And really, all this fueled by a passion for the best consumer experience, the best brand experience, which was very novel at the time, and really advocating for product quality policy all around. So, the conversation with the caregivers, for me, it's just a matter of consumer preference. At the end of the day, I think there's space for all of us to succeed in this industry. And very analog to some people buy their tomatoes at the farmers markets and other buy it at the local grocery store. Well, our industry, as it matures, everybody should be able to coexist and define find their spot or their sweet spot in the market. It's all a matter of consumer preference. Yes, we have different views about how things should be regulated, but I think it's normal. It's a nascent industry. There's no book on how should it be done. Never done, I mean, since Prohibition. So it was eons ago. So I really found this very, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to really start from the ground up on so many fronts. So some people might find this scary. I found this exciting. And, this was also the very first investment, that further on led to the creation of Acreage. So there's a lot of pride, in starting in Maine. Not a lot of things start in Maine. And I think there's a very strong role for cannabis to be driving economic growth in Maine and full-time jobs and all of that. So I think there's a lot of things that started in this little corner of the world back in 2011. But, I still, some of the what I pride myself is the team that I've built there, and that has really been a phenomenal team and really a resilience that is exceptional. They're still with the company, and they're the oldest tenure employees in all Acreage.
Wow.
So I take a lot of pride also in the development of the team, the skill set, being able to build a culture, a lot of commitment to communities, volunteering, the environment, and so on and so forth. So very exciting adventure.
Well, yeah, congratulations. That's a great legacy to have, especially when the people stay. As you've moved, that's really I think bodes well for them. Um, Jumping back to Acreage and sort of your strategy role, one thing that we have seen in cannabis media as we've tracked licenses and companies and whatnot are the variety of strategies that some MSOs have used over the years to grow and finance. Like, for example, there were a lot of investments made by real estate investment trusts. There was a lot of M&A going on. For a time, we even saw people trying to franchise dispensaries in certain states. I'm just curious, like, what do you see as some successful strategies that are in place? Because I think for all those, aside from maybe the REITs are still in place, but I don't see new ones, and M&A really seems to have slowed down. Like, what do you think is likely for growth strategies for larger multi-state operators?
Well, I think, I'm not an expert by any means in REITs and all of that, but I think it was a time in the evolution of our industry where they were truly needed to expedite access to facilities. We were, 2009, there was this race to scale up to, as fast as possible. And I've learned firsthand the challenges of being able to access facilities, prime real estate, discussing with landlords, and so on and so forth. So they were very needed. at that time. I think now, we are, again, our industry is in a different part of its life cycle. We're maturing. There's more broader access to assets. I think what is really important is there was a pivot over the last few years where the industry really became about not just financial investments, but the fundamentals of being a good operator.
Yeah.
Talking about margins, talking about ERP, talking about all these elements. So I think that changed a little bit the landscape for us. We pivoted from expanding as fast as possible to many states to really focusing and recentering on, well, let's do less states, but do it really well and go really deep and make sure we own our skill and what we do, which was a profound change. Going back to really being an operator of a company. When it comes to merger and acquisition, I think they're still happening, and there will still be some. I mean, this year, 2024, 2025 are challenging years, right? There's increased competition, price compression. It's very high velocity markets where things change day by day, and it's really going to be about weathering the storm and survival of the fittest. So as part of this scene, which I think is just a natural course correction of the evolution of a nascent industry, there will be distressed assets. You hear about receiverships. So there will be assets for the right. Funds are not as readily available, but they're still funding. There's distressed assets, so there still will be some consolidation and moving. But I think our industry is now smarter than it used to be about what is the right consolidation, what is the next move, and so on and so forth. So much more deliberate and curated growth, and I welcome that.
So with that background, I don't know if you can share this, but are there certain states that you're looking towards? Like, boy, we'd like to enter that one, or is that happening, or is it really still about let's focus on operating where we are now and do it quality
as of now, we're very much focused on our footprint. We have an amazing footprint. We're in New York, New Jersey, or Pennsylvania, that are poised to be one of the biggest market in the world. Pennsylvania is looking to be open up to adult use. Ohio also is about to shape up with adult use. So we're at the right place at the right time with very strong position in each market. And we want to turn this into a success.
That's great. That's great. Now, talking about the market sort of in generally and almost globally, I'm curious how you see the structure of the market changing over time. Like, we have things happening potentially with federal policy, and then there's also been more talk on the international front, like with what's going on in Germany. So I'm just curious your thoughts on that and what kind of impact that may or may not have on our industry.
So let's start with the federal. So I'm in this industry for 12 years, and it's supposed to happen next year for the last 12 years. So I'm a cynic. I will not base my assumptions on that. This being said, last year when the HHS made their rescheduling recommendation to DEA, this is the biggest milestone, the most promising, or the closest we've ever been of becoming a normal industry, regulated, but I think being able to potentially come off the Schedule 1 for us would have profound changes in the sense that taxation would be lifted, no more 280E, which would free a lot of capital and cash flow for us to reinvest in the business and expansion and so on and so forth. So on the federal level, I think we've been the closest we've ever been from seeing, a tide change. This being said, I think we cannot forget, even if all of a sudden all of we were federally legal, there still will be all the state regulations to adjust all the way to the municipal regulation in correlation to the state regulation and all that. So there's a long lead. I've learned it firsthand that, these changes take a lot of time to take into effect and be enacted and implemented, and because you have to do regulation and all of that. So close to seeing a change, but it's going to take a time and resilience to get there. When it comes to international expansion, hey, I think there's plenty in the U.S. for us to focus, namely as potentially we deregulate and all of that. And this is one of the biggest markets. So I think there's a lot to focus in the U.S. When I look at towards international expansion and, namely Europe, I mean, I come from France, so I know a thing or two about administration in Europe. It's challenging and complex, and we should never underestimate the complexity of, yes, it's one market, but it's really still, state by state and country by country, and it's going to be a very long haul. So I think, looking towards international expansion, you have to be very deliberate about where you go, and also be able to have the funding or the backing to weather the time it's going to take before it comes to fruition.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Now, focusing, as you did on our industry, I mean, in the last couple of years, we've seen it here where a lot of our clients have exited the industry. They've run out of money. They've gone out of business. We're definitely wondering, has the industry hit bottom in terms of contraction, or do you think there's still more to go?
No, there's more to go. There's 80% of Americans have access to cannabis and, for a regulated form of cannabis, but there's still a lot of potential. There's still, going back to CPG, right? I mean, we're not toothpaste yet, but I hope one day it will be easy for folks to access cannabis, as easy as going to a grocery store and, getting your a natural remedy. So I think there's still a lot of potential. There's still a lot of potential from a product innovation standpoint, from really a consumer developing brand experiences that are differentiated. There's still some markets that have not opened. Think about the South, think about the potential of Texas. I think what we are experiencing now, which might sound like it's the end of the world, is after years of tremendous explosive growth, there's a course correction or of operators. There's also a recession that is on the horizon, for the next couple of years. So it's a challenging time. Post-COVID, there's uncertainty. There's, the world has never been that, there's a lot of anxiety. I think 41% of Americans are accessing therapy or something like that. So cannabis can help. Oh my God. Pain, anxiety, insomnia, we're here for that. We can help. So there's a lot of potential from the consumer societal need. I think what we are currently experiencing is just another phase of the evolution. I mean, I've been fortunate to see the evolution of to live first row the evolution of this industry. And I think it's just normal, it's the ebb and flow of an industry that is maturing. But I still think there's a lot of potential. Markets are still opening. I mean, look at New York, several billion. So I think there's still some potential. It's just that, we have to be more on our skill, more proficient and more expert. And yes, there's a lot of, as you said, some of your clients exited, or I think there was also a time where it was people mistook cannabis as the cool industry to be in, to generate very quickly and easily a lot of profit. Easily is where they got it wrong. There's no there's no pixie and fairy dust in this industry. It's more about grit, resilience, and problem solving. So I think that's where some people were a little unrealistic, I would say, about expectation and didn't set themselves for success.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the notion that you mentioned before, kind of about the financial and operational excellence, is really what's important. And that's another reason why we can't hope on the federal government to sort of bail us out, because you still have your business to run, and given the constraints that we have. So, you just have to deal with that and manage accordingly and effectively. And I think, I don't spend a lot of time looking at the financial statements of the public companies, but some of them are definitely, moving in the right direction, or actually, getting toward true profitability, which is a big milestone for the industry.
Absolutely. Becoming cash flow positive is really driving us. Refinancing, there's a lot of refinancing going on, because again, it's a different phase of our industry. It used to be, let's access, capital at any cost, but now it's no, we need to increase margins. We need to, there's all these fundamentals that are in play, and we cannot ignore that. The plant is very special, but the fundamental of a successful company are the same.
Yeah, very, very true. Now, in terms of, Acreage, what challenges are you all confronted with? Sort of what the question, what's keeping you up at night? What challenges there you have really trying to solve, or that are taking up a lot of your brain power, your team's time and effort?
What is keeping me at night? How are my brands to be national?
Yeah.
This is our mission. This is what we want to do. We have created a huge momentum for our brands. We are very lean, very frugal, and how can we create one of a kind brand experience, brand love, foster brands that are really exemplifying how it should be done. One of our brands, Superflux, is a tribute or celebration of the craft of cannabis, and exceeded sales goals by 80%, garnered multiple iTimes awards in a concentrated and flower category. This is what is driving us, being the best we can and making sure as many consumers can potentially access it. So this is what is keeping me up at night.
Keeping you up and
the momentum,
obviously. So that's great. Now, finally, as we kind of look forward, Patricia, into the trends and things out there, what should we be keeping an eye on? I know when we last spoke, there was obviously new states coming on, and also the whole hemp-derived cannabinoids. We're seeing a lot of that with states jumping in. I mean, do you see those trends or others that are really going to affect our industry, for let's say 2024?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. And derived cannabinoid is something we must look at, because it's much lower cost. Access to cannabinoids at a much lower cost. So what do we do? Is this a threat? Is this an opportunity? How do we play there? There's also interesting, I think, if you look at the macro environment, psychedelics are on the rise too. It's another natural medicine, medicine that is embarking on a very similar path and what we've lived through with cannabis. So there's different things that are on the horizon. I think at the end of the day, it's about consumers. Yeah. Where are consumers at, and what should we look at? I mean, there's uncertainty, anxiety about the future, our society. And I think this is what will be driving a lot of, how folks are willing to access the cannabis, and will be, fostering this momentum. I think from a geographic expansion, as we mentioned earlier, there's still some big states that we have not cracked the code, but If you look into the I think what is interesting is we keep thinking in states, like one state at a time, but if you look at the reality, going back to the consumers, the East Coast is fully adult use. So the reality of the consumers has no confound of state borders or such. It's the one open market already.
Yeah.
Regulations are not like this. Policy is not making it us operators seeing like this. But consumer reality is different. You can get in your car and go one state up or one state over, and it's there. So I think it's very important to reconcile how the artificial dichotomy built out of policy is very different from what the consumers are living. So I think it's a really important part of what aspiration of what we have to be, really catering to that too. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Patricia, very much for that look forward and for the discussion today. It was great hearing from you and learning more about what Acreage is doing.
Thank you so much for your time. Always enjoy a great conversation to start my day.